Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre, hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us on our new YouTube channel, Terror in Tandem, or online at terrorintandem.com. But don't forget Instagram at Terror in Tandem.
And obviously on Truth Social, where we have our biggest presence.
Boy. Anyway.
Hello, co-host.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Why don't we take a break, take a vacation, take a journey, take a trip, take an adventure, get away from it all, get a change of scenery?
No.
Nothing could go wrong.
No.
I feel
No,
like
thank you.
it's
I'm busy.
the perfectly safe thing to do. Nothing could ever go wrong. And
I don't wanna, because of all the trips gone wrong. You've heard of
that's a
Girls
good
Gone
point.
Wild. This is trips gone wrong.
That's a good point. Maybe we should just stay at home and do an episode on trips gone awry.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking today about trips and vacations.
Or just the road trips.
Let's
or
start
going
off
from one destination to another. Or maybe you want to take a nice hike with your friends.
The common
Maybe
theme
you just
is
are moving from one state to another for a new job opportunity.
they go badly. This was sort of a double-edged sword for me, researching this episode, because there is both an absolute abundance of titles to choose from. Apparently, leaving the house is something we are all afraid of, and vacations. But it also crosses over very, very tightly into the home invasion or the cabin in the woods genres. You know, you could easily say that Evil Dead is a trip gone wrong because they travel to the cabin. But it's really more of a cabin in the woods kind of story.
Well, I think we could make an argument for all kinds. We have lots of ideas swirling around these dark brains of ours. And, you know, some of our ideas are like nature horror that occurs in nature, or nature horror, right? So some could be argued that Evil Dead could fit that bill.
One scene in particular.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And we could
Nature.
maybe down the road have an air travel horror.
Terror in the skies.
Road trip horror.
Yeah. Well,
So we wanted to present trips gone wrong with the permission to do road trips.
oh, absolutely.
that end
That's the
badly.
thing. There are so many movies to choose from and books.
You can think of the
It's a pretty common fear, you know, leaving your comfort zone, leaving your familiar surroundings, leaving the things you know, the routes, the safe places, the familiarity. Travel is so often talked about in society as a positive. You know, we encourage each other to travel, broadens your horizons and whatnot. But within the horror genre, it is almost always an opportunity for people to get brutalized.
Yeah, and one specific example from 1972's Deliverance,
Ooh.
based on a best-selling novel, James Dickey, British director he's a Sir.
Yes, Sir John Boorman.
John Boorman.
Director of The Exorcist 2, which I think we can all agree is
he
not
originally
good.
wasn't in Hollywood. He jumped into this.
Oh yeah, no, he's a very famous classic director.
Yeah.
Made some really interesting movies.
And so Point Blank.
Sorry,
Hell in the Pacific.
Lee Marvin.
Yeah.
Point Blank is awesome.
So he was pretty successful, and then he decided to make Deliverance. And this is where it's not the first iteration of Trips Gone Wrong, but I think it's one of the most notable
Absolutely.
of the genre, in the way that Outward Bound trip now has become a popular trope in American thriller and horror. And over the next decade, we start to see like Whiskey Mountain and Rituals and Southern Comfort.
Oh, Southern Comfort. Yeah, with Powers Booth.
And it sort of, and honestly, Deliverance
And,
saw Jon Voight with a Globe nomination and Borman nominated for an Oscar.
Deliverance is no joke. It's a great book. It's a great movie. And it's so firmly entrenched in the American psyche that just hearing dueling banjos, you think, even if you haven't seen the movie Deliverance, even if you don't know it's from the movie Deliverance, you know it's associated with some sort of hillbilly-related atrocity.
Yeah, it opened the door to the outsiders entering the rural outback.
I mean, that's the thing about the book and
finding
the film.
Communities that you're basically not
welcome in.
Right.
These suburban weekend warriors, most notably Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty. Poor Ned Beatty really gets it rough in this movie. So they are the intruders. They are the invaders. I have a fun anecdote about this movie. So there's a scene in which Burt Reynolds' character goes over a waterfall. Mm-hmm. And they were going to use a dummy because, it's dangerous. And Burt Reynolds absolutely insisted that he do the stunt himself. To John Boorman, to everyone, he refused to proceed. So he did it and almost killed himself. Ended up in the hospital, multiple fractures, like really fucked up, bad.
Yeah.
And one of the first things he said when he came into consciousness, John Boorman was there. He said, "How did it look?" And John Boorman said to him, "It looked like a fucking mannequin, Bert." So,
yeah, I mean, it's similar to Tom Cruise in that way, where he insists on doing.
Yeah, but at least when he does it, it looks good. Like, this apparently, even the shot, they had one chance to do it. Burt Reynolds almost killed himself, and it still looked like crap.
Funnily enough, Tom Cruise has this famous story. I guess he told it to maybe like one of the Ryans or something.
One of the Xenus?
No, one of the Ryans, famous Ryans.
Who the fuck are the Ryans?
Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah,
Ryan
sure.
Gosling.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
or one of the Chris's.
Got
okay?
it. Yeah,
so it's
no,
either a Chris or
I'm
a
with
Ryan.
you. I'm with you. Yeah, whatever, like standard white
or
guy
it
name.
could even be what's his name?
Mayonnaise Jones.
A Wahlberg.
Yeah.
So I guess famously he said, I want to do my own stunts, but the stunt coordinator said absolutely not. And Tom Cruise is like, well, do you know what I do in that situation? Find a new stunt coordinator.
Yikes.
So
I imagine
you can
it's
see Tom
hard.
Cruise break his ankle in one of the Mission Impossible
Oh,
movies.
no. He didn't break his ankle. He shattered his leg.
Yeah, well.
And kept filming.
I know.
The man
kept running.
Is unique.
Yeah. So anyway, back to not Tom Cruise movies. Has Tom Cruise ever been in a horror movie?
Legend. If you consider that, it's like dark fantasy.
Yeah.
But not that
I would say Vanilla Sky would probably be the closest thing.
I mean, based on how bad it was.
Tom Cruise, will you do a horror movie?
Oh, The Mummy. Sort of. It was like an action horror movie.
Tom Cruise,
Interview with the Vampire. That's
Tom
a horror
Cruise,
movie.
will you do a real horror movie?
Do like a scary one.
Do you know that Brad Pitt turned down the Michael Fassbender role in The Killer because he said the material was too dark?
That makes sense. I feel like Brad Pitt is in a pretty fragile state in his life right now.
Yeah.
He's got a lot going on.
And he did 7. It doesn't get darker than that.
That was like almost 30 years ago. And also, this is a little belated, but...
Happy birthday, Brad Pitt.
R.I.P. Richard Roundtree, who was in 7, and just all around legend. We've lost a lot of legends this year. Julian Sands, Treat Williams.
Back up to the legend of
Deliverance.
Bad road trips. No, or bad, trips gone wrong.
Yes.
I don't think we're going to talk about Jeepers Creepers or Joyride or Wrong Turn.
But those are all great examples.
Yeah. These are like road tripping teens whose vehicles are sabotaged by hill people usually.
And Stephen King, also a master of this genre, because what's more Americana than an interstate road trip? This is something that was really promoted.
Could The Talisman be considered a road trip movie?
Absolutely.
Or
I mean,
a
Dr.
trip
Sleep,
movie?
part of it is a road trip
book,
yeah. You know?
But we're not going to talk about any of those.
No, but it's so infirm. It's so deeply ingrained in the American consciousness, the idea of getting an RV or taking a road trip, going on the interstate. This
Just
started,
a vacation.
This started in post-World War II with the creation of the interstates and the suburbs, and really promoting that. And now it's become, this sort of American dream that so many of our parents' generation talk about or used to talk about, of like, well, I'm going to retire and get an RV and just drive around and that'll be my home.
And sometimes these are just, let's just take a weekend getaway,
Yeah.
or I have a job, or I want to take a road trip.
There's also
I just want to see something. I want to go on vacation.
There's something so...
Some of these are vacations gone wrong.
Especially in our modern lives where it feels like we're even scheduling downtime for ourselves, which is bananas. Every inch of our lives is precious, that when you fuck up a vacation, it's just the worst, because you have put that aside. You've got one shot. You've taken off work. You've made all the preparations. You've got deposits you can't get back. So even a missed flight, which happened to us recently, wasn't a missed flight. It was a flight that just never took off. It ruins everything. But that's better than some of the examples we're going to be getting into.
That was, honestly, I will pick a delayed flight over any of these situations that we are going to talk about. So why don't you start?
Oh, goodness gracious.
With your first example.
I am going to start.
Unless your example is after 1986, and then in that case, I'll start.
All of mine are after 1986.
Then I'll start.
Do it.
So my
roller coaster
example is The Hitcher.
Ooh.
It's no secret that I love this movie.
Everyone knows it.
And I would argue that it was one of the best horror films of the year. That year, 1986.
1986 was a great year. The Mets won the World Series.
They did.
The Hitcher came out, and The Hitcher was a long time gap in my viewing history that you introduced me to.
I did.
You corrected that. We sat down, we watched C. Thomas Howell have a real bad day with Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, so starring Rutger Hauer, C. Thomas Howell, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Directed.
What an 80s cast.
I know. Directed by Robert Harmon.
Jennifer Jason Leigh is still crushing it, by the way.
Yeah, she is. And this was Robert Harmon's directorial debut.
Wow.
Yeah. So the scenario is that C. Thomas Howell is on a cross-country drive. He decides, because he's falling asleep at the wheel. And honestly, the first half hour of this film really lays the groundwork for everything after it. Just an innocuous road trip. He picks up a hitchhiker to keep him awake. And it's raining pretty badly, and honestly, he pulls over, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "My mother said never to do this."
Yeah, there's a reason for that. Also, if you're going to pick up a hitchhiker, don't pick up Rutger Hauer.
Yeah.
Or anyone that looks like Rutger Hauer. He just looks...
But it's raining, so you can't tell. It's just like sort of cloaked and hitchhikery.
The bad guy from Blade Runner, for God's
it's
sake.
a long trip, and it's in the 80s, so
yeah,
he decides to pick him up, and
doing a solid.
He basically gets Rutger Hauer's character in the car. C. Thomas Howell is named Jim. Rutger Hauer is named John, and John just starts to create unease in the tempo of his speech, in the weird random comments and
his body language. Also, he
grabs him
right.
inappropriately.
He's not, like, if you found yourself sitting next to this person, you would immediately be like, oh fuck.
It's basically we don't know this at the time, and neither does Jim, but it's too late for him.
Oh,
Once
yeah.
John
Once he
gets
lets him in the car, that's it,
it's
baby.
too late. And as we go through the film, and, this is, I think we just hit, I want to say the 35th anniversary of this film.
It's been a while.
Yeah. We see things start to unfold. Like, C. Thomas Howell starts to get like that he made a huge mistake, and he rids himself of John.
Or does
and
he?
Then John starts to pursue him and create a scenario where Jim is being implicated in John's crimes.
Yes.
So essentially, John the hitchhiker is a serial killer
who
takes the opportunity of hitchhiking to serial kill.
And the wonderful terror of this movie is it's absolutely random.
Yeah.
He just goes for C. Thomas Howell because he picked him up. If it had been someone else, he would have gone for that person.
Yeah, and had.
Yes, and has.
Because
yeah.
you
Yes.
see one of the earlier cars that C. Thomas Howell drove past.
Can you mention
before pitching up the hitchhiker?
One scene in particular involving tying someone to two different trucks?
Jennifer Jason Leigh. Oof. Yeah. That was Rutger Hauer's idea.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa. Yeah. Rutger Hauer.
I know.
Shit.
Dark. Yeah, a drawn and quartered scene, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, like how they used to do it in the Old West with horses.
A good death. But the other thing, too, is the police get involved. And like I said...
Hooray! Everyone's saved.
Rutger Hauer's so good at what he does. He is setting Jim up to fall for his crimes.
Yeah.
And the only way out, I mean, John says it to Jim, I want you to stop me.
Yes. I know, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
And it should be noted that, C. Thomas Howell, for those of you who aren't familiar, especially in the 80s, he's like kind of nerdy.
Yeah.
He's
he
skinny.
made one terrible
really very
mistake.
Unfortunate, very bad
movie. But we forgive him
movie.
because I think his intention of the rest of his career has been one
Let's not hold
of honor.
What was that movie called?
Soul Man.
Oh God, with Rae Dawn Chong.
Yeah.
What was she doing in it?
Being beautiful.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But skip that one, but watch this one and see what happens. Does Jim outrun John?
C. Thomas Howell is the perfect person to play this role because
you can see Thomas Howell.
Goodness
in
gracious!
This film.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
You're welcome. You're welcome, audience.
Yes.
You rarely get these hilarious gems.
Just gold dripping from your phones. He's a perfect casting for this because he is slight. He's very normal looking.
He's just a stupid kid
he's very
on a
average,
road trip.
like very imposing kind of one in a million type person who has to go through very extraordinary things in order to make it out of this.
He's earnest.
Yeah.
He is.
But there's nothing
just
special about him.
Around in the world.
And
like
that's
any
sometimes
other young kid.
my favorite kind of protagonist is somebody who's not in any way special.
Unlikely hero.
Who just
or is he?
Rises to the occasion like, Frodo Baggins basically.
Because a lot of what he does and choices he makes, it doesn't end well for others. I mean, he does involve
he fucks
Jennifer
up.
Jason Leigh's character in this horror show.
Because he doesn't know what to do. Who would?
I do have some facts about this film. Sam Elliott was actually hired to be the character of John Ryder, but he had scheduling conflicts, so he had to back out. He would have also been great. Different film, but I would argue that it would be a great film.
God, I would have loved to have seen a villainous term from a younger Sam Elliott. I mean, in 1986, he's I think his hair was starting to go white around that time. But like, you ever see Sam Elliott from like the 70s when he's like,
I know what he looked like. The screenwriter of the film, Eric Red, said that his inspiration for this film was the Doors song "Riders on the Storm."
Oh God,
which puts this film into a whole nother context for me, because if you listen to the lyrics, this is exactly what this film does.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fascinating. That's like watching Wizard of Oz to Dark Side of the Moon, which is honestly not that great.
Up
But
to like a point. I think like for like an hour or so.
And then it loops.
Yeah.
But I add that to the alternate universe movies. I would love to have seen Sam Elliott, but Rutger Hauer is iconic in this role. Rutger Hauer, rest in peace, King. He was great in everything he did, even though his career kind of slumped for a while, and then had a lovely renaissance before he passed, and well-deserved. But in this role, this is maybe, along with Blade Runner, some of his best work.
One final fact, because I have equally as good taste as this director. This is one of Christopher Nolan's favorite films.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can kind of see some of that in Memento, in that both of those movies are very tight.
Yeah.
The Hitcher is it's a masterclass in it's not wasted space.
I guess they filmed a lot more.
Really?
Of what you saw, and it originally got an X rating, but
oh wow,
they had to
edit it down.
Some of the
it's still pretty hardcore.
It is.
Like it's not
the 80s horror.
Yeah.
They really didn't hold back.
Oh yeah. That was, everything was excessive in the 80s. My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. Which one do I want to do first? I think I'm going to go with Wolf Creek, coming from Australia, 2005, by director Greg McLean. Now, Greg McLean has come up on this podcast before because you mentioned his film Rogue in our Killer Crocs episode, a world-renowned classic Terror in Tandem episode that everyone loves. We actually won the Palme d'Or for that, even though it's not a movie.
We got a 23-minute standing ovation for that episode.
Incredible. They really know how to do it at Cannes. So, Wolf Creek, it's a bit of a controversy. It definitely divided critics along along
the creek. There was one side of the creek that liked it, and the other side.
Well, it divided critics along very predictable lines, and by that I mean this is a brutal movie. So Greg McLean knows how to make a tight film. This movie was shot on a $1.1 million budget, and the goal of it was to make a $5 million film on a $1 million budget, and mission accomplished. This movie made bank. It spawned a sequel. It spawned a TV series. Now, the dual hooks of this are definitely director Greg McLean and star John Jarratt, who plays Mick Taylor, what the Aussies might call a bogan, which is a word for kind of an outback hillbilly.
Yeah.
So he's like an Australian version of Deliverance, but he's also very clever. He's a sadistic, xenophobic, racist, woman-hating serial murderer who picks up 3 backpackers, not from around these parts, and tortures them. He really, really puts these people through the ringer. Now, the thing with Mick Taylor is he's extremely charismatic. He's reprehensible in every way. Every word out of his mouth is awful. Even if you were just like having dinner with him, he's basically your racist shithead uncle who won't shut up about his politics. So the thing with John Jarratt's Mick Taylor is he ties people up and kills them. So Wolf Creek divided critics.
It's a torture.
It is. Now I do want to let people know this is it's a bit of the ultra violence. This film. It's a hard movie to watch. It's bleak, but if you are into serial killer movies and you're into villains you love to hate, this is a good choice. Greg McLean's direction is very assured. It's very tight, and it's unrelenting. The criticism this movie got from people like Manohla Dargis and Roger Ebert was the violence was too realistic.
Roger Ebert, think he gave The Hitcher a 0.
He hated horror movies. He always hated horror movies.
Yeah, he said it was too violent.
Yeah. Well, Roger Ebert and I disagreed on many, many, many things, especially his view of genre films. He was not a fan. Everything had to be like a prestige drama for him. So anyway, Wolf Creek has spawned a sequel. It spawned a TV series. It's incredibly popular. It was shot for $1.1 million and made a lot more money than that.
So Ivan Millet was a serial killer who killed at least 7 tourists between 1989 and 1993.
That's one of the 2 killers that I believe was the inspiration for the screenwriter.
They're known as the backpack killings.
Yes.
And took place around the Belangelo State Forest in the southern part of Australia.
Now, it's
southern part of Australia, man. They have the
South Australia
killer crocs.
I tell you, I know some folks from South Australia, and they are maybe the most dangerous thing we've ever mentioned on this pod. So,
one of the people that actually narrowly escaped this killer was named Paul Onions.
Good on you, Paul Onions.
You really peeled a layer off of that story, didn't you, Paul Onions?
So, Wolf Creek is not an easy watch. It's not for the casual viewer. It's a mean film. It comes out of an era, the mid 2000s, where movies like this were definitely popularized. The term torture porn was thrown around. I wouldn't necessarily categorize this as torture porn, but it is a movie in which I think you are encouraged to root for the murderer, which is uncomfortable. And I think Greg McLean does that on purpose. It forces the audience to, if not sympathize with, because there's really nothing sympathetic about Mick Taylor, then at least enjoy the antics of this demonstrably funny and charismatic monster who does terrible, terrible things.
And he's like, there's no consequences, really.
No, does it again and again.
In the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of fucking nowhere.
And he justifies it by being like, well, you're...
That's exactly it. Yeah, no, his big thing is you don't belong here.
Yeah.
You came onto my land, my, area. And he basically claims the entirety of the Outback, which is like most of a continent. So anyway, Wolf Creek isn't necessarily the kind of movie I seek out. I enjoyed this because, like I said, it's well directed, and John Jarratt is just on fire in this role. Like, he really, really leans into it, and to whatever effect that has on you, it can't be denied that the man throws himself into this role, and I would argue to great effect. Wolf Creek, 2005. Check it out.
Want to take a break?
Let's do it.
Picture this. It's a cold, rainy night. Your mom is sitting next to you at your bedside. You're feverish, tossing and turning, and just not quite feeling yourself. What's the one thing you know will make you feel better? Reagan's home-style pea soup. A recipe as old as time that's been unearthed and packaged for your own kitchen or cauldron. Blended to perfection, this easily digestible and regurgitatable soup will help you keep those demons at bay. With just a single serving, you will be satisfied and sanctified. With Reagan's home-style pea soup, you can be free from the pressures of the divine and stop filtering your true beliefs. Just let it all go. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse possession or exorcism. So all the way to 2019, my next recommendation with Midsommar.
Many Moons. Ooh.
Written and directed by Ari Aster, starring Florence Pugh and Jack Rayner, and also that other guy.
Will Poulter.
Yeah, Will Poulter.
Yeah.
Not many Americans in this film, just one. Most of them are regional or, Brits.
Let's
like
also
Florence Pugh and stuff.
not forget William Jackson Harper.
He's the American.
Yes.
Yeah. From Good Place.
From The Good Place. Yeah. Chidi Anagonye.
Yeah. So it's really a breakup film wrapped in a cult film, wrapped in a tourist gone wrong film.
Oh, it's just the best.
And it's got a lot of lot of Paul Onions to unpack. And it's like almost 3 hours long. So there's a lot to it. One thing that's really striking is the visuals of it. It's all in, as soon as they get to this festival, it's daylight and it stays daylight. So it's almost as if we're with the character of Danny, played by Florence Pugh, and everything comes to light for her once she gets to this festival. So the summary is that they travel to Sweden. She's invited with one of her boyfriend's friends. Her boyfriend's on the verge of breaking up with her.
Oh,
but
just a great guy. Super duper.
She just suffered an extreme loss with her family through her sister's suicide in the accident.
So he does the only thing
killing of her parents.
A good guy does is stay with someone you're miserable with and treat them like shit.
Yeah. And you quickly realize that what they've come into is very strange. Not just because it's, in a country and traditions that they're not familiar with. But
it's like a
it's
completely
lost in
separated society.
Yeah. It's lost in time. Nobody explains what's going to really happen. No. They're given something to drink right away. They're not really told what's going to happen.
We drank some mushroom tea.
Reiterate that? They're not told what's going to happen really at any point.
No, and it is mushroom tea. That's what they're given.
Yes. And so that trip also goes wrong. The actual psychedelic trip that Danny has, because she's really becoming part of this earth land and part of this community. They really pull her in.
I would argue it goes really well for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a voluntary, though.
No.
She's involuntarily
but there's a
becoming
sense
absorbed into this community.
Especially given the opening frames of the film, there is certainly a pervasive sense of destiny.
Yeah,
and fate.
of course.
Like she was always meant to travel there. She was always meant to take her place.
Sure, but fate is often involuntary.
No, it absolutely.
But, I mean, so everybody she feels paranoid. She doesn't know what's going on. The men are doing like weird things. They're crossing the lines of the rules. There are very few rules.
They're total jackasses. Yeah.
And then, it's a festival that happens every 90 years. And on the one side, her relationship is crumbling. And on the other side, she's trying to be part of this very seemingly generous community that's very welcoming to her. So it really, at its core, this film explores trauma, transformation, like a personal transformation, and like the journey that you go through when you're once one person on the side of pre-grief or pre-trauma, and then on the other side when you reemerge. Like there is sort of like almost a birthing scene.
Yeah,
that is her rebirth.
It reminded me of the Norse myth of the death of Sigurd, and his wife Gudrun couldn't mourn. She couldn't cry, and it was the hero Brynhilde who berated her and yelled at her until she started crying, because even the ancient Norse understood that grief had to be experienced.
Yeah.
You could never hide from it. And there's that incredible scene where Florence Pugh is basically, she starts off screaming, and then all of the other women start breathing in tandem with her.
Yeah, it's them. They're
experiencing.
They're like absorbing her into their community.
But also, it's an unashamed and very vocal explosion of emotion,
and
which we do not tolerate in our modern society.
She's definitely there. She's shown suffering. She's having nightmares. The maypole dance scene is challenging. She sees her soon-to-be ex-boyfriend cheating on her.
Mm-hmm.
And
he drinks something interesting.
Yeah, he does. He's the only one with any bit of color in his drink.
Mm.
But it's really
tangy.
It's really interesting and dark and really sinister. But
the fascinating
also,
thing,
it's brightly lit, which that's the real juxtaposition of this film. It is not. It is a dark in like its undertones,
it's
but
sun-drenched
in its visual,
horror. Yeah.
It's and also the sound.
It takes place in northern Sweden, where the sun doesn't go down for in the summer, and was essentially.
But they're all wearing white.
Yeah.
There's like colorful flowers.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
really the
yeah.
only color.
Yeah. No, it's like the antithesis to the late
white.
90s and 2000s trend of everything being gray and black and washed out. This is ultra colorful and still very scary.
Yes, very scary because
it's
there
Ari
is
Aster,
no
baby.
hiding almost.
Yeah.
You can't really hide your true nature. I just how I feel. And
Absolutely.
These weird outbuildings that all serve a purpose, and you all come to understand the purpose, and it's a very terrible and dark purpose.
Florence Pugh
and there
is
are
phenomenal.
rituals that they're all there to be part of, whether
Blood
they
wings.
are voluntarily being part of it or not. And it's all in an effort for this friend of Danny's boyfriend to bring Florence Pugh into the community. It's all a plan.
Well, it isn't, though, because she was not invited originally.
But he insisted that she come.
After
the death.
After they invited her, he was initially surprised, and then he was like, okay. Because I think he recognized that this was the fate.
Yeah.
Because it's a deeply spiritual community and very, ancient fate weavers and strand cutters and things like that.
I mean, the May Queen, it's really something that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great folk horror going on in this one.
So, but this,
I love it to death.
I would say for the majority of the people that start in the film, that the trip goes terribly wrong. Goes argue
really
that
bad.
It goes well for Danny, but I think it goes the way it was meant to go.
Look at where she was at the beginning of the movie and look at where she is at the ending of the movie and tell me that she's not better off.
It's hard to say because this was the only option she was given. We hadn't seen her grieve in any other way.
She basically I get it. No, I maintain
the methods
obviously,
in which they collected her into this community and their practices.
Oh, definitely.
But
I think that there is an element of fate to it.
Sure,
I don't think it
absolutely.
Was,
But, fate doesn't always mean better off.
In this case, it does.
So that's mine.
My next, that is amazing, obviously. And I was so happy that you liked it because your reaction to Hereditary was different.
Well, because it was really disturbing.
It's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
I watched this movie in secret because Richard had wanted me to watch it and I didn't want his prying eyes.
Or my lying eyes. So my next one is a twofer because it's a book adapted into a movie. The book is The Ritual from author Adam Neville, and I definitely recommend reading it. It's a corker. It's a really good book. It came out in 2011. Now, here's the thing. The 2017 movie version, which was directed by TNT fave David Bruckner, is actually better, in my opinion. I think it's one of the few examples of a film adaptation improving on the source material, which is great. That being said, the book is still really, really good. So essentially, in The Ritual, there's a group of British friends, male friends, and a terrible tragedy befalls them when the lead character, played by Rafe Spall, is out with one of his friends, and there's a robbery in the store they're in, and he freezes in fear, and his friend dies. And he blames himself for that, even though, in reality, probably couldn't have stopped it anyway. So a few years go by, and the friends have drifted apart from each other a bit, and Rafe Spall especially is dealing with severe PTSD and survivor's guilt. So they decide they're going to gather together and go on a hike right next door to Midsummer in Norway. They're going to go for a little hike in Norway. Now, these are middle-aged or approaching middle age weekend warriors. And they go on a pretty hefty hike and then do the smartest possible thing you could do when hiking in Norway, go off the path. So they enter into ancient, millennia-old woods that humans have not been in ever. There are actually woods in Scandinavia that you're not allowed to enter, that have never been touched, it's just ancient.
Yeah, it's like the forest. It's not woods.
Exactly.
It's like the forest.
Now, this is a great case of going where you do not belong. So these men encounter a monster known as Moder, which is Norse for mother. Now, Moder is a Jotun. Now, fans of Norse mythology might know Jotuns as frost giants. It doesn't really look like a frost giant in this movie. It's an awesome creature design, though. It's very, very cool. So Moder is not happy that these outsiders have come to her place. And she has a small group of worshipers who live there. And, well, all the things go wrong. Everything goes terribly.
They start getting injured and stuff?
Oh, yeah. They start getting injured. They have to hole up. They start getting sacrificed and fucked up and dealing with this creature. Has a really, really good face-off between, Rafe Spall and Moder. And it's really about essentially overcoming the grief you carry with you, the pain you carry with you, and finding, the strength to carry on. Because at some point, this, clinically depressed man has to decide, I want to live. I want to survive. It is a terrifically scary film. It's a very scary book. Great performances, great design. And it really, the reason I prefer the movie to the book is it trims down a couple of the subplots that, while fine in book form, I think would have dragged the movie a little bit. The pacing in this film is wonderful. It hits off almost immediately. It doesn't take long to ramp up. And by the ending, you are just panting. So I think trimming it down for the movie format was a smart move. But you really can't go wrong with either. The Ritual doesn't exactly pass the Bedshell test. But I wouldn't say it's an overly masculine film. There are some of the men are bro-y types. Some of them are nerdy types. Some of them are just regular Joes. It's not necessarily about machismo. That's not why they're doing this. It's really, there is an exploration of masculinity and what it means to be a man, but it's a lot softer and a lot more realistic than what you might expect from maybe an 80s movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably not expected to be anything other than these men that experience this.
I'm saying, even
thing.
though much in the way that The Descent had a cast, almost entirely of women, but I related very strongly to a lot of them, I think female viewers will get a lot out of this film. It's not, even though the cast is mostly men, it's not inaccessible.
Yeah.
And there are some female characters in this movie, and they are scary.
Yeah.
I mean, Moder.
Right.
The Ritual! Anything by David Bruckner, but The Ritual.
So my next and last and final, and the last one I'm going to talk about at the end of my list
All at once.
is called The Island.
Ooh.
And then it came out in 2022 by Adrian McGinty. And it's about an American family's trip to Australia. And basically they go to an island off the coast of Australia to explore. And again, they are where they are not welcome.
Oi, come to Australia, where the spiders are as big as cars.
They decide to rent a car and they innocently kill a woman, a local woman, in a car crash.
Innocently kill?
Yeah, it was really an accident.
Oh, okay. It's just weird. I've never heard the expression innocently killed someone.
Yeah, they were driving
Accidentally
their car.
killed, sure, but like innocently killed, like, oop.
Yeah, well, accidentally, innocently, they kill a woman.
It was adorable.
And they decide to hide and dump her body.
Oh, see, that's less innocently.
Mm-hmm. So
Guiltily.
It's Tom, who's in his mid-40s, and his second wife, Heather, who's in her late 20s.
Did he run over the first one?
And his two kids, who are both teenagers, Olivia and Owen, and they're turning Tom's business trip into a family vacation, and they don't like this new wife, obviously. Yeah. It's very quick turnaround. His wife had just died of a terminal illness about a year earlier.
What kid wouldn't love that?
And so basically he's thrusting this woman onto them, and the nature of how this story unfolds is, she really becomes somebody they need to rely on or trust.
Yeah.
And essentially they're pursued on this island for survival. And it's surviving in Australia with nothing. God.
Yeah, where like everything is the size of a building and poisonous.
But also not understanding the makeup of their enemy. They don't understand this family and why the family just won't let them leave.
Yeah, yeah.
And what they actually did wrong.
Yeah.
If they can come and admit to it. Will that make everything better? There's some of that.
Oh, God. Yeah. You just want to be like, for whatever I did, I'm fucking sorry. God, stop stabbing everything.
But it's not like the law exists.
Yeah.
This is a lawless place where mainland Australia leaves them to their own devices.
Yeah.
Like ungovernable.
Yeah. Like you do your thing. We won't bother you. Just be weird inbred hillbillies.
Yeah, there are several generations that live on this island, and it becomes a real run and hide and survive story.
Nice.
Of which I don't think Heather ever signed up to be a parent of teenagers, because she just fell in love with this man. And
does anyone?
Got all swept up in the romance of it.
Yeah.
And now she is trying to save everyone's life.
Yeah, that's a lot,
including Tom. And where's Tom?
Maybe be nicer to stepmom.
Maybe or maybe not. I don't know.
Interesting.
The Island. It's really a great read. It did just come out in 2022, so I'm being purposefully vague.
Yeah, I understand it and appreciate it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not The Hitcher that's been out for 30 years.
Yeah, we can talk about
something that you really don't want to know. The ending.
Oh shit, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I really loved it, and surprisingly, that's why I'm mentioning it, is because it wasn't something I would have normally picked up. I actually heard it on NPR. When they feature books and they say, oh, this new book, and just the whole story of it, as I terribly described it, was much, betterly described on NPR.
Well said.
Thank you.
Today on NPR, Ira Glass.
It was really intriguing.
We'll discussing...
So I got the book out of the library and read it in a couple of days, and it was really that good. So highly recommend. I always like to throw a book in there.
We'll be talking home remedies for canning your own jams and murder.
Let's talk about the 90-year Midsummer Festival that's coming up.
And now, Ira Glass with a special on Blood Wings. So, my last one.
Did you say Blood Wings?
Yeah. Which happened in Midsummer.
Oh, I know.
Anyway, my last one is The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, do they ever?
But I'm throwing you a curveball. I'm doing the remake. I am talking about the 2006 remake of The Hills Have Eyes, directed by horror maestro Alexander Aja, director of classics such as High Tension and Crawl.
I love those movies.
Oh, yeah, they're great. He makes a tight, scary movie. So, listen, the OG Wes Craven Hills Have Eyes is a classic. Michael Berryman is incredible. Dee Wallace is incredible. Watch it. It's amazing. No disrespect. I just wanted to change it up a little bit. I feel like a lot of my recommendations lately have been skewing older. So I wanted to go back to a movie that is only 18 years old. Good God. Anyway, so The Hills Have Eyes largely follows the original movie. The Carter family, led by the legendary Ted Levine and Kathleen Quinlan. They are, rent an RV with their kids and their daughter Emily DeRaven, who at this point is famous from Lost. And they run afoul of irradiated inbred mutants in the New Mexican desert. Now, they, much like the original film, they play very heavily into the theme of the callousness of the American government for essentially poisoning its own land and people. When we weren't irradiating and bombing New Mexico, like in the Trinity test site, we were destroying literal paradise, like the Bikini Atoll, by dropping hydrogen bombs onto them, because that's just how we roll. So anyway, this movie is about the effects of that. Now, very famously, the horrible Genghis Khan movie that the horrible John Wayne shot, they filmed that near the Trinity test site, and he, along with many members of the crew, got cancer and died.
That's terrible. That
is awful. And that is what happens when you set off nuclear fucking bombs in your own backyard. So anyway, this movie deals with sort of a fictionalized aftermath of what happens if you have hill people living in irradiated wastelands and fucking each other for generations. You get the late, great Billy Drago as Jupiter, the patriarch of this fucked up family. Now, they haunt and stalk and eat and murder and eat and set on fire and do just all sorts of awful, awful shit to the poor Carter family. R.I.P. Ted Levine and Kathleen Quinlan. They get it rough in this one. Although Ted Levine had it coming. He was Buffalo Bill. It was time for him to pay for his crimes. So the reason I love this movie is primarily for the arc of Emily DeRaven, of the brother of the Carter family, played by Aaron Stanford, who I primarily know from the old X-Men movies. He was Pyro in like X-Men 2 or something. But he is amazing in this movie. And this is really about a soft, suburban, modern, white-collar guy thrown into a horrific situation. And the only way out is to give up everything he knows and believes in and become an animal. And that's essentially what happens. You watch this poor guy descend into violence and depravity to protect himself and his family. The only way to win against these people is to kind of become them.
Yeah.
So this is
like prove your value.
Yes. And this is, again, a very brutal film, much like the original is. It's extremely graphic. It is mean and can at times be a tough watch. But the message it has, while a little heavy-handed, I would say anything to do with nuclear weapons is by nature heavy-handed. Kind of hard to do a subtle metaphor there. So I do like the messaging around that, and that these hill people who do terrible things are also victims. They have been betrayed and poisoned by their own government, by the people that are sworn to protect them. Now, that doesn't excuse their behavior, but it ain't a great thing to do. So I really, really recommend anybody who likes Wes Craven, anybody who likes 70s horror, anybody who likes horror at all, watch the original. Mm-hmm. Skip the sequel. It's terrible. Wes Craven directed the sequel. There was a sequel to the remake. Both of them are really, really bad. The remake is fantastic. If you're looking for something a little bit more modernized and a bit more polished, go with the remake.
Yeah.
And this is a classic example. I mean, they rent an RV. They go to the desert. They have a campfire. Nothing is more Americana, bucolic, American dream than that. You've done well enough in life that you can pack the family and the grandkids in the car and go off and enjoy yourself until a family of mutant hillbillies sets you on fire and kidnaps your grandkids and does all sorts of really bad things to you. But that, I think, is the effectiveness of the vacation gone awry subgenre, in that we all look forward to it so much.
And your your defenses are down.
And to the point, we look forward to it these days, I think, with an air of desperation, where we're desperate for a vacation.
Yeah.
We need it. It's not something we do for enjoyment. It's something almost that's become a method of survival.
Even family vacations, it's like, we are going to enjoy this trip.
Oh, well, yeah, there's that. There's always that classic, vacation style.
Are we there yet?
You'll have fun or die trying. But the idea that it's your one chance to take a break, and you do let your guard down, and there is that inclination when you are in a new place to try new things, to lower your inhibitions, to do things you normally wouldn't do, to sing karaoke, things like that.
I would normally sing karaoke.
Same. But, and do. But I really think that the lasting success of this kind of story is that it's such a universal desire, that wanderlust and that need to break away, and to put danger in that, and to that's what horror does, is we take the things you like and we ruin them.
I don't agree. I think we only enhance.
Yeah, enhance. Enhance.
So we hope that the next trip you have planned will involve listening to this episode.
Yes, and
on Trips Gone Wrong.
Quick PSA. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. If at the beginning of your trip, a dirty, gnarled old gas station attendant starts raving at you about, the haunted house murders, I get it. He's dirty. He's weird. He's got grease in places he shouldn't. Just listen. Listen to him. Listen to him. He's always right. He's always right.
Yeah, maybe just pack it up if you start hearing weird noises.
Turn around. There are other places to go.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we'll get entertainment out of your despair through fiction.
Thanks for stopping by.
Have a good one. Safe travels. Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Suspanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're still